Hello, Duhawk. Sorry for the delay. The computer was a little slow today, but I am here. Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop. It is a very exciting jam-packed show tonight. I am luckily able to go a little over tonight, so it will still be at least an hour, and I have a lot to get to. It's going to be an episode where if I don't get to everything, we will keep the theme going for Thursday's episode too, because there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about this week and the last week of my show, which will be after Thanksgiving break. So anyway, we're just going to jump right into it. So this is basically a best of 2019 special. So my picks for the best of the best in K-pop releases in 2019. And I'm not the songs I'm going to play are all nominees for my big top 50 ranking of the best releases this year, but they're not in order. And they're all just nominees. I don't even know if I know, but I'm not even going to tell you where they are in the selection yet, if they made it. So anyway, so these is just kind of a taste of what will come, and then in probably a future episode, and not this one, but we'll see, at some point this semester, I will be counting down my picks. Not all top 40, but I will share the ranking with you all. And also, I'm going to be predicting and thinking about what the future of K-pop looks like, especially 2020 and, in the future, but future years that are relatively close to now. So anyway, lots to get into. So let's just start right off the bat with some of the best releases from 2019. All right. And those were two of my nominees for best in K-pop in 2019. Starting out with Sweet Chaos by Day 6, followed by Tuxedo by Ravi. And those two examples are some of my examples for predictions I have about artists who could potentially make it big in breaking through in the United States in 2020. And I think Day 6 will and not Ravi. So let me explain. So Day 6 has already, I guess you could say, made it in the United States. They have done tours at theater venues, so not like arenas, but I do actually think, I don't know if they'll make it to arena status someday, but I do think they'll upgrade from theater status to whatever's between a theater and an arena status. I do think they will gain a very significant, they'll have a big fandom growth this year. And the reason I say that is because they match kind of the current vibe that has been going on in the Western music scene. Because believe it or not, I still listen to Western music too. And so I've kind of just like keyed in on and paid close attention to some trends in the Western music industry. And some of those trends we talked about before, where a lot of it's kind of melancholy and just kind of like low key, like not super energetic music. But alongside that trend are other trends as well that are not like that at all. Like there is a variety on the radio now, even if some people think there's not. There is if you're really listening and paying close attention to the song creation. But anyway, so a few other trends I've seemed to notice is that a lot of the pop music that is on the radio nowadays is like old school, like it's like 90s, early 2000s reminiscent pop. It's like dance pop. It's like Britney and like earlier Madonna, like, I mean, Carly Rae Jepsen is not old, but like that era of like, those kind of artists were very, very pop in a very certain, like old Lady Gaga classics, like that kind of retro pop. I don't know the right term for it, but that vein of pop music seems to be coming back. Because you've got artists now like Dua Lipa's music kind of reminds me of that. Ava Max is getting really big. Not just because she looks like Lady Gaga, but she really does. And yeah, I feel like that's going to make a comeback as all music trends do come back around, just like fashion trends or trends in any other area of life. So I see that coming back. But in addition to that, I see more of that. So the thing is, like, a lot of, like, the main trend from earlier decades that seems to be coming back is that kind of pop music, but I also see coming back other trends from that decade then. Like, it seems like there are a lot of uses of electronics and, like, synth noises that were big in, like, certain, like, 80s, 90s bands music, and Day 6 seems to be incorporating a lot of that into their newer stuff. There also sometimes is, like, just more going on, more instrumentals and, like, different sounds, and Day 6 is really experimenting with that. This new album especially, they've got like more like rock and roll vibes in there, more like an industrial sound, but they also have the synths in there. They're really like playing with a lot of genres, and I think just like playing with genres right now, in like kind of an homage to like past decades, whether that's intentional or not. That just seems to be an overall trend I see in music. So anyway, so I see Day 6 as being very popular, and I think, you know, people who are hesitant to listen to music that's not in a language they speak, they're missing out, and I think a lot of the American public really would like Day 6 if they gave him a chance. As for Ravi, I don't think he'll get super popular in this country. He has like toured like smaller than theater venues here, so he's been here, but I don't think he'll gain popularity because his management just frankly doesn't help much. But besides that, but I do think he is following the trends. Like, if he had the right promotion, I could see him getting bigger here too, because he also kind of has that vibe of lots of like electronic elements added to the creation of his music, and it's just something about the way he like uses auto-tune, but in a way that's like it's part of his thing, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you hear one song or like, ew, too much auto-tune. It's just like that's how he sings. Like, it's all like got that techno filter, and that seems to be really popular right now as well. So anyway, those are some thoughts I have about some artists that can make it big, but there are a lot of other reasons why. There's some artists I see making it big in 2020 and others that I don't. So there are a lot of... There's one star that I do think will also make... Before I move on to the next topic, I'll say that another star I definitely see as having a very big year in 2020 is Eric Nam, the one I've been talking about who, you know, basically to become famous had to like go to Korea instead of like he was raised in Georgia, but you know, the U.S. is not exactly fantastic at diversity in the media. So, but now that he's released his very first all-English album, which is really, I mean, he seems very relieved because now that he gets to promote this full English album, he gets to like just, you know, it's less to deal with. Like, less emotional labor has to go into it because, like, what he's done before is he would have to write his music in English because he's just more comfortable writing in English. So he writes songs in English, but then he'd have to, like, partially translate them into Korean when he was releasing K-pop stuff. And I'm sure he still will. He won't, like, get rid of his Korean fan base, but right now I think he's just focusing on the U.S., so... I really hope that more artists like him can do that. You shouldn't have to go to Asia if you're Asian to, you know, be successful in the music industry. So it's an exciting precedent he's setting, and I do think his vibe is very much what you hear on the radio lately. It's fun fact, he works with Lauv a lot, so he's got the Lauv vibe. So if you like Lauv's music, you might like his. Lauv actually has worked with BTS too. He's worked with quite a few K-pop stars, so he's like genuinely into collaborating with them. So if someone collaborates with Lauv, you can think, hey, if a K-pop group does, you can think, hey, maybe this is the start of them, you know, towing the line and seeing if they can break it in, make it in America, break into the U.S. market. So anyway, I have some more thoughts about not just who will do well here, but what I'm also wondering is, so we talked about the 7-year curse before, where a lot of K-pop groups have 7-year contracts, and after that, the groups are done. And there are a few groups that I have strong faith in that I do honestly think are going to stay together. I don't think that's just me hoping. I really genuinely believe it. So here are some examples of songs from artists who the bands they are a part of, I just see them lasting for a long time. And I'll explain more after these songs. It's Okay by Dio from EXO, followed by Want by Taemin from SHINee, and that last one was Eclipse from GOT7. Again, this is my best of 2019 episode, so those were some more nominees for you. All right, so some more predictions I have for the world of K-pop. So first of all, we got to talk about EXO. So we've discussed the 7-year curse, and the thing is that, you know, EXO debuted in 2011. And it's 2019 now. So they've already broken the 7-year curse. And my prediction is that they will totally stay together. I have many reasons why I think that is. Part of it I just think is demand, honestly, because if a group is at such a peak, they're less likely to disband for obvious reasons. They've got the budget, obviously. They've got the publicity. They've got the demand, and they really are. They're called the group of Korea. They're like the face of Korea. And they sell out arenas globally as well. And a lot of K-pop artists are getting so big, they are filling up not necessarily arenas, but they're filling up venues in the US, but EXO fills up arenas. So like they are next level even in the US. So like imagine how next level they're viewed in Korea. It's like the Backstreet Boys at their peak, maybe. I don't know what other comparison to make there. But anyway, so they are, and they genuinely seem to I think they're going to stay together longer as well because they are able to do their own solo projects, and they, time apart is almost healthy, and they really have staggered their military service. So like right now, Dio is in the military. That was his goodbye song he dropped before he left, and Schumann is there as well now. And so, so there are not as many members promoting right now, but EXO is still, keeping their name out there, and also, it's just absence helps sometimes. You're living in a lot of these K-pop groups live in dorms together, so they probably get so sick of each other. So to have a few of them away on the required military enlistment time might actually help the group last longer. And so Taemin and SHINee is a good example of that too, because SHINee debuted in 2008. So yeah, they've been around for 11 years now, and they're still going strong. And I think it does help when they get that time apart. And right now actually Taemin's the only one not in the military. He's the baby of the group. So, but he's still obviously very much keeping SHINee alive. Like the group is continuing. It's not like they decided that they're done now. So yeah. A little bit more about this. A group that I think will not break up because of the military enlistment is BTS. And again, that is because of their global impact, which, makes them less likely to, ever stop really or be motivated to stop. And also, they genuinely like each other, and that helps a lot too, obviously. And they also get all that creative freedom. Like, they genuinely are still holding on to that passion they have for their work. But aside from all that, even, I spent a whole week talking about the fandom and how they've created this cool fandom and how they've just like touched so many lives in such an immense way. It's like if you were close with a family member and then all of a sudden the next day you like never saw them again. It's like that wouldn't happen, It's like they just are very personal, and I don't see that ever changing with them. So even if they stopped making music, they'd still communicate with the fans online. They'd still probably have like in-person meetups to meet fans or things like that. So I'm very hopeful for them. I will just clarify. So it's a little so I'll just clarify. So in South Korea, if you are a man between the ages of 18 and 28, so you can be as young as 18 but up until age 28, you have to join the military for 2 years, and you can do more, but the requirement is 2 years. Women can join; they're allowed to, but they aren't required to. This has been in place since 1957, so it's been a very long-standing thing. There are very, very rare exceptions to this enlistment rule. Occasionally, they will cite a physical condition, and occasionally they will give you a reprieve for what they call financial hardships. But they mean like down on your luck, dirt poor financial hardships, not you have no spare change because you left it at home financial hardships. And so, but those exceptions are used very, very rarely, and not made on a dime. Those decisions are, you will have to wait a long time to decide if your request to defer your enlistment is accepted or not. So the oldest member of BTS, Seokjin, is going to be 27 this year, and so actually just next month. And so he would have to enlist by age 28. So we still have a little bit of time, and people are speculating if they think each member of BTS will enlist at the same time or stagger it, because a lot of groups stagger it, but then again, some groups like to all go away at once and then come back, so the group isn't like ever incomplete. So we'll see about that. the thing is, actually, in recent years, this has been a big debate, really. So basically, when Seoul hosted the Olympics in 1988, there was suddenly they started like allowing. There was this law that went into action, or a rule, some guidelines, some legislation went into effect after the 1988 Olympics that basically said there are certain high honors that are so high for representing South Korea that it basically replaces the honor you would serve us in the military. So your military exemption could come if you were one of those star Olympians that year. And so since then, it has been used for more athletes. I know, like, there's one soccer player, I can't remember his name, but last year he won some big soccer. I don't follow soccer, but there's a soccer player in South Korea who just got his military deferral approved after they won this big championship in South Korea. And so the athletes are getting that exception, but there's just been a lot of debate in the government in recent years about if they should expand that rule. So they're thinking and they're actually using BTS and referencing that group by name as an example of, should we expand this to musicians and artists who also give great contributions to Korea? Because, I mean, BTS really has financially helped Korea's economy a lot, not just from like tickets and merch sales and other things like that, but the amount of tourism to Korea, to music video locations, to the places that BTS just recommend visiting and going on vacation to. I mean, the tourism amounts have just skyrocketed since BTS's fame skyrocketed. So they actually really have made some very huge positive shifts for South Korean culture. So, if anyone would deserve the deferral, I think it's them, but obviously I'm biased and don't know the ins and outs of the rule. But it is something to think about. My prediction, though, is that they will not take the offer even if they are given it. I don't even think they'll be giving it because, like I said, those deferrals are given so rarely. But also, I do think that if you grow up in it's hard if you live in the United States, I guess, to think about it the same way. But if you grow up in a different country where you're basically grow up with the mentality of, at this certain age, I have to go do this, you kind of grow up like, you learn to, it's not like something you fear or want to avoid or want to defer. It's like your calling. It's viewing like, and if you grow up thinking something's your obligation to do one day, and then someone says, well, you can take the easy way out, you don't have to go, you're still going to say, no, I want to go, right? And so I just think it's kind of just ingraining your mind over time that this is your duty, so it seems weird to just like not do it. So I just feel like they're going to feel this obligation to do it, especially because of all the ways they talk about, being very proud of where they're from. I just feel like they're going to do it, but we do have some time before they have to, so savor that and don't worry about thinking about that too much. So those are some groups that I do think have lasting power because they genuinely like each other, they're successful, and so those are some of the main groups there. There are some groups that I am not quite sure, and I think they will try to break into the U.S. and it will not work, or it might, but I'm very curious and I'm not sure about, and I'm going to explain why after I play a few songs. So one of the group/subgroups I gotta play is NCT, and them I can see them doing well here because they are, well, I'll explain after I play them. So here's one of the NCT subunits. Alright, and that was Boom by NCT Dream, followed by Sage by Only One Of, and I've got more to say about both of those groups, but first I've got a smorgasbord of random predictions for K-pop that I need to recap. So, as I've said before in previous weeks, I think ATEEZ is going to have a huge year. Day 6 will have a huge year. Ravi should, but I don't think he'll get it. Eric Nam will have a huge year. I talked about, I think SHINee and EXO will stay together. I said GOT7 I do think will stay together. Here's one of my big predictions that I haven't said yet. I think that GOT7 is going to be the next K-pop group or one of the next K-pop groups to get to perform on The Ellen Show. I don't know why, but I have a good feeling that they're going to do that because they are so popular in the United States, even compared to Korea, which is interesting. And I'm not quite sure why, but I do, maybe, I think part of it's just kind of their mannerisms and stuff. They are they reference a lot of movies and music from the United States, so they clearly have like grown up with some of our culture. So maybe like they adopt certain mannerisms and just are a certain way that really we find relatable and it resonates here in the U.S. But it is interesting because actually all over the world there are certain random countries that seem to like suddenly, or continents really, that seem to really be huge fans of a certain K-pop artist. Like I know Card is in South America. They're probably still there on their tour, and they're huge in South America. I don't know what it is really, but something about their vibe really resonates in South America. So it's just like that. I mean, all over the world there are some interesting like pockets of K-pop fans that really like gel with certain artist vibes. So I think GOT7 has that vibe in the United States. They can fill arenas on their own, which is a big deal. And so I just feel like it's odd they haven't been on Ellen or something like that yet. I mean, because BTS has, Monsta X has, Super M has. I really don't know if anyone else has. Not since I've been a fan of K-pop. So that's been a few years. Anyway, so I just think they're going to be on Ellen soon, and if that happens, you can say Hope was right. So I get a good feeling about that. So I will also say that I'll have more to say about the Grammys later, but I will say that apparently the Grammy nominations leaked early. I didn't look at them though, so I promise you I'm not just like saying this. I really am predicting the BTS will like be involved, be like, obviously I know they're like appointed like official Grammy ambassadors now, but I just think they will, or people they've worked with will get some, I think their work will get nominations. I mean, unless they're not allowed to because they're on the board now, but I think they can still be nominated. But if that's the case, I think they're gonna have a huge year at the Grammys. I'm just saying that. And so those are some big predictions I have there. I also have to point out why that last group I played only one of is an example of some of the many groups I like but worry they will not break into the US. And here's why. It's not even about their sound or anything about them personally, actually. It's just about group saturation. So, first of all, if we think about, if your main question really is, well, is K-pop just a fad for a few years, or is it going to stay so popular, especially the US? I will say it's going to stay so popular, and it's not a trend. This is a lifestyle. It's more than a passion, but also because it is just growing and growing and shows no signs of stopping. And I mean, so KCON, the K-pop convention that is worldwide but has 2 stops in the USA every summer. It goes to New York and LA. KCON actually their cumulative number of attendees, like over the years since this started in 2012, their cumulative number of attendees for KCON has officially surpassed 1 million since this past August after the LA KCON this year. So it was like a slow build up at first, but now their cumulative amount of attendees over the years has been 1 million people. And they went from like performing at little stages to like the big KCON, end of KCON concert being at Madison Square Garden and, iconic venues like that. So I definitely don't think that's going to change. What I do think is going to change is, or will need to change, honestly, is the fact that there are so many groups now. So this has not always been the case. The first few generations of K-pop, where they call, first and second generation K-pop, and even third generation, because we're kind of entering what's called fourth generation K-pop. But the first 2 or 3, it was very much like maybe 10 new groups would debut a year, like across all the K-pop companies, little small companies and the bigger companies. All of those companies would debut like a total of like 10 groups a year. And it's gradually gotten to more and more. And so now it's like, gosh, how many groups debuted this year? I mean, the number of girl groups this year is close to 30 that debuted. So it went from 10 overall to like at least 30 girl groups debuting and probably at least 30 boy groups then. And 1 or 2 co-ed groups usually. Well, not usually, but there are a few. So, I mean, the amount is just, if you think about how it's adding up every year, like so many groups are debuting because they know now is like the moment. And some people in the industry probably do worry it's a fad and they want to like, push the groups now instead of waiting. And so that's it's an example of why I think groups like Only One Of, I just worry that they're not going to get big here because they're new. And at some point, I just wonder if people will just kind of like not be hardcore fans of new groups, you know? Like, they'll just reach the saturation point. Like, I mean, like, I obviously love a lot of groups, but I'm only a hardcore fan for a handful of groups, and I can't become a hardcore fan of more groups. There's just not enough time, and I just don't have any. Your dedication can only be hardcore if it's selective, right? Otherwise, it loses meaning to say you're a hardcore fan. And so, like, other new groups I'll check out, and if I really, really dig their music, I might become a hardcore fan. But, I'm less likely to if I already have my groups, I have my fandom identity. I don't need to seek out another fandom to join because I already feel like I'm in fandoms that I'm going to stick with and artists that I'm going to still be rooting for. So I just wonder if other people are that way too, because, if I'm feeling like I'm hitting saturation, then probably a bunch of other K-pop fans are too. And so I think there will always be more K-pop groups, and they will still be, don't get me wrong, like, I'm thinking, like, success is so relative that they'll still be successful. There will always be new K-pop groups that sell out shows in the U.S., whether they're at tiny little venues or big venues, doesn't matter. They can come to the U.S., and there will be a crowd here waiting for them. And I like to go to those shows still, don't get me wrong. But I think it's not like all these new groups are going to continue to grow and do arena tours. I don't think like that's going to be a trend. Like, a lot of K-pop groups may still like gain popularity here, but they're not going to be a lot more that are like following in BTS footsteps and EXO footsteps and all of that and filling arenas, if that makes sense, because people already have their being in fandoms is like such a strong part of your identity that it is like, I don't think other people, like, there will always be groups that can come here because if they go to the smaller venues and they are, they do shows that are, cheaper and maybe easier to get to, more in a special, smaller, intimate setting. Like, variables like that about smaller artists people really like. So there will always be a crowd willing to see them if they're into the genre, the industry, etc. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, I'm at the point after all these years of liking K-pop where instead of going to all those little shows for artists I kind of like, I would trade like 5 little shows for like one big special experience, like getting a good seat to see one of my favorites in an arena or something like that. Like, I'd take a bigger show over someone I'm a hardcore fan of over going to a bunch of little shows. So I just think that trend will continue for other people too. And so the people who can fill arenas will continue to do so without any problems. But then the people who, do those other shows, I mean, they'll still get a crowd because, like I said, there are things about that smaller atmosphere and the cheaper price and everything that people like. But it's just, I guess what I'm ranting about and trying to say is that I think there's going to be a lot more picking and choosing for K-pop fans now that there are so many groups, and they just keep releasing more groups, and they only stay together for 7 years usually. So I just think that it will be a lot more picking and choosing over time. And so, you can't go to every show. So it won't be the same over time if there are still so many new groups, because you latch onto certain groups and feel like their fandom suits you, so you're there and you won't be elsewhere. So I'm probably not explaining this well. I'm really thinking out loud about what I expect for the future because it's just so many groups. I just don't know. I just think events like KCON will always be huge, and liking a variety of groups will always be huge, but I just think there comes a point where people will have to say, wow, like, I don't have time to check out all this music. I'm just going to focus on supporting these groups and going to their shows. And so I think, like, fandoms might be a little more divided, or just there will be less crossover over time. I don't know. It's just something to think about. And in general, with the music industry, what trend that might lead to. So anyway, there is a lot more I could have said about NCT that I don't really have the time for, but I do see them as doing pretty well in the U.S. But it is, I guess, somewhat debatable still, because they are just so unique. The whole NCT concept is so unique, and we've been through that before. Go back to episode 2 on YouTube if you need a refresher. But so there's that. So then again, what I was saying about Only One Of is that they're one of the groups that I think just will not stand out because the industry's so saturated, and So it's going to be harder and harder for new groups to stand out because there's so much more competition. And especially with so many members, like these bigger groups are going to have just like a harder time with, they're having hardcore fans who know all their names and know all their parts of the songs and their quirks and all of that. So I just think groups like that, like I also think SF9 won't get super popular here. There are other groups with so many members. Golden Child probably won't get super popular here. Momoland probably not. Groups with more members than the average of 7 are, I just think they're going to have a harder time breaking through, especially when, like, if there's so many, they're kind of like blending together in your head, or they have super similar vibes, and you just worry that they won't be able to distinguish themselves. That's why I think ATEEZ is going to do so well, because ATEEZ is so unique and have such a vibe that's classic ATEEZ. They've like got their own genre going on. So anyway, a lot of rambling, a lot of speculation. Sorry if that was not interesting, but I think it's interesting to kind of think about which groups are resonating in the US and which are not, and possibly why. So I just think that's a thing, and I do think that also has to do with size, because in the US, we're used to 4 or 5 member groups. So to have so many is also not something we adjust to super smoothly. I will say something that kind of goes against everything I just said, but 17 is filling up arenas now. So this group 17, I really think they will do well in the US though. And here's why I think they are an exception. They are very, very well known for their choreography and the aesthetics of their music video. They're a very visual group, and they are very in sync. They like have a mesmerizing stage presence, and that's what makes them stand out. And it's also something that I think people will want again, because like I was saying before, people are cycling, music trends are cycling, so probably performance trends will too. And so, a lot of artists now, or it seems like less than usual, do choreographed dances. Like, it feels like that was a thing for 90s groups more. I could be wrong, but it's just what it seems like. So it feels like a full circle come around for now. Their groups like 17 are like bringing back what people might have missed about groups, because they really put on quite a show. They don't just get up there and sing. They're doing a lot, and there's a lot of visuals on stage, and they really just give people a unique concert experience. They really distinguish themselves, and that's going to be more and more necessary as more and more groups form and more groups tour in America. They really have to work to like distinguish themselves, all these groups, and so 17 has just done that seamlessly. So that's why I think they'll continue to be popular here. All right, a little bit more to wrap up the show after I play one of the best 17 songs of 2019. All right, so there is a lot of news in the world of K-pop that I don't have tons of time to break down for you, so I will be doing a ton more news updates on Thursday. But a few quick things that I find interesting. BTS Love Yourself tour numbers are finally in, and they have broken records once again, of course. So the Love Yourself tour totals, they sold 976,283 tickets, and for a total of $116.6 million. So an average per show was $5.8 million, and 48,814 tickets sold. They've only been surpassed now by the Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift, and the Spice Girls in history. So they are just in 4th place for, most seats and money sold from a tour. I also brought up before how there is this controversy with how it's actually illegal to rig reality TV shows in South Korea. So the person from Produce 101 is in big trouble for rigging the votes and choosing which singers won the competition show. So that's actually a crime there, which, I feel like it shouldn't be everywhere, but anyway. And that actually is affecting the artists. So one of the groups that was made by one of these programs, they're called X1, they were pulled out of a a live award show last minute that they were going to perform at. So they ended up with, the audience looked like a third empty. I mean, a lot of people did not show up, probably because they came just for X1 and then they realized they weren't coming and they didn't show up. So it really is having an effect on these artists, because when one person does something wrong in a lot of cultures, really, that are not so individual like we are in America, it really does have an effect on everyone they know. So, guilt is a collective feeling more, and resentment towards someone is a collective feeling. So this shame that this vote rigger brought to the company, he also brought on to the groups that are related to his name. So these groups are also suffering from that. So a girl group from one of those programs, Eyes One, they also have been having issues. So their album release was canceled. It was even like taken off Amazon listings and everything, like officially canceled. So it's really having a big effect on those artists. So I'm not sure what their future is. They're very successful. But believe it or not, money isn't everything. So in the K-pop industry, they might just decide they're replaceable groups, and we can still make the money with other groups, and they don't want to have, because not all press is good press there. So that will be interesting to see what becomes of that. There's a lot more I want to say. I will talk a lot about what's going on with Tracing and TS Entertainment, but that's a long story, and I will go into that more Thursday, as well as a lot more updates. So Thursday is going to be big, and instead of predictions, it's going to be more just kind of a look back at 2019. I'll be talking about some of the best music videos, the best album releases, and I will be giving the official ranking and countdown for best. I'm thinking I won't get through top 20, but I might in a way. So the songs I've already played on the show, I'll skip, and the rest of the top 20 you haven't heard yet, I'll probably play that or something like that. But I'm going to play the top of the top in a ranked order finally, and we'll get to number 1. You'll see what my favorite song of 2019 is. It's very exciting. I already know what it is, but I'm not saying. But it's a good list. I'm very proud of this list. I've thought about this a lot. So the big reveal will be Thursday, as well as a lot of news updates. So that's the show. I hope you enjoyed it and that it wasn't too rambling. Remember, you can catch up on our YouTube for any episodes you want a refresher about. And I will see you Thursday. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great night.